nalalidaloko tranaya karuna gana ganatam shamsharadava nalalidaloko tranaya karuna gana ganatam prapta sakalyanam gunanavasya vande gurashi charanarvrindam prapta sakalyanam gunanavasya vande gurashi charanarvrindam vande gurashi charanarvrindam Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Mahaprabhu ki Tana Nitya Gita Vaditramadhyam Manasurasenam Mahaprabhu Romanchakam pasru taranga bhajo Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Romanchakam pasru taranga bhajo Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Shringaratanma Diramajanado Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Shringaratanma Diramajanado Juktasya Bhaktamsa Niyunjatopi Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Juktasya Bhaktamsa Niyunjatopi Chaturvidhashi Bhagavat Prasadam Satana Triptam Hari Bhakta Sangam Chaturvidhashi Bhagavat Prasadam Satana Triptam Kridvaiva Tripti Bhajato Shadeva Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Bhajato Shadeva Shiradikama Dabayarapara Madhura Leela Madhura Leela Gunarupanamna Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Nikunjayuno Ratikelisidai Yayali Virjukte Apekshaneya Nikunjayuno Ratikelisidai Yayali Virjukte Tatrati Daksha Ativalavasya Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Tatrati Daksha Sakyadari Bena Shashri Kintu Prabhoja Priya Evatasya Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Priya Evatasya Vande Gurashi Yasya prasada Bhagavat prasada Yasya prasada Nagati kutapi Yasya prasada Yasya prasada Nagati kutapi Dayam stubam tasya yasatri sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanaro Vrindam Dayam yasatri sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanaro Vande Guru Shri Charanaro Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitina Mine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitina Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravane Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunavadi Pachata Deshatarine Namaste Deve Gauravane Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunavadi Pachata Deshata Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Nityananda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Nama, Krishna Jadavaye Nama, Jadavaye Madhavaye Keshavaye Namaha, Gopal Govindaram Shrimadhusudan, Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan, Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita, Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita, Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhattaraguna, Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasaraguna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Shri Radha Nilamada, Radha Nilamada Radhe. Jaya Jagannatha, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadrama, Jayo Sudarshan Chakra. Jaya Sitaram, 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 Jayo Lakshman Hanuman. Nitai Gaur Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaur Haribo, Haribo. Haribo, Nitai Gaura Pramanande Hari Haribo. Jai Vishnupada Paramhansa Prabhajagacharya Sutara Srimad. His one grace of Vajravina Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Pratishta Bhiviti Samstapakacharya, Vaishnava Siramani Patita Pavana, Srila Prabhupada Ji Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Gauriya Guru Varga Patita Udhar Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunatha Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Gunasat Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai. Ananta Kuri Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Jai Param Dayal Shri Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai. Jai Pramanama Sankirtaneka Janaka Prema Purushottama Shri Sachinandana Shriman Gauranga Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Gaur Hari Mahavrina Avatar Ki Jai. Golokera Pramadhan Harinam Sankirtan Jaga Ki Jai. Jugadharma Hare Krishna Mahamantra Ki Jai. Brihad Midanga Transcendental Book Distribution Seva Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopagopna Radha Kunsama Kun Giriraj Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Brajabhum Vrindavan Mathurudam Ki Jai. Dear Lordship Shri Shri Radha Nilamadhava Ki Jai. Shri Shri Mayapur Navadvip Eka Chakradam Ki Jai. Paramakaruna Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai. Shri Purushottama Kitra Jagannath Pridham Ki Jai. Shri Shri Jagannath Swami Baladev Prabhu Smaspadra Devi Sudarshan Chakra Bhagavan Ki Jai. Bhakti Sarva Vigna Vinashana Kar Shingare Bhagavan Ki Jai. Jaganga Maya Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Shri Mathura Dharani Ki Jai. Shamaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Nitai Gaurari Pramanande Haribo. All glories to the Assembly Bodies. All glories to the Assembly Bodies. All glories to the Assembly Bodies. All glories, all glories. Glories to Shri Guru Shri Gauranga. Haribo. We want to do Tulsi or you be here? Tulsi? Namaste Nadashi Gaya. Namaste Nadashi Gaya. Pralada la da aine. Pralada la da ine. Hiranyakashipur Bhaksha. Hiranyakashipur Bhaksha. Silatankanakalaye. Jaya Silatankanakalaye. Ito Nishingo Parato Nishingo. Ito Nishingo Parato Nishingo. Jato jato jamita tani singam. Bahirine singam, Rudayene singam. Narasingha Madhimi Sharana Prapade. Tabakara Kamala Bare Nakam Adabhuta Singha Dalita Hiranyakasipu Tanabringa Kesavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Tavakara Kamala Bare Naka Adabhuta Singha Hiranyakasipu Tanabringa Kesavadita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Kesavadruta Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Kesavadruta Narari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Jaya Nisingade Jaya Nisingade Nisingade Jaya Nisingade Jaya Narahari Jaya Narari Narari Jaya Narahari Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Bhakta Prahlad Mara Bhakta Prahlad Sila Prahlad Mara Nitai Gora Haribo 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 Nitai Gora Haribo Nitai Gora Premanand Jai Shri Shri Bhakti Pata Sarvighnashana Kanishingare Bhagavan ki Jai Ye Bhakta Shrestha Prahlad Maharaj ki Jai Nitai Gora Re Premanande Hari Hari Bol
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्णा प्रियासी नमो नमः राधा कृष्णा सेवा पाओ ऐ अभिलाषी राधा कृष्णा सेवा पाओ ऐ अभिलाषी जे तमारा शरण लो तारा वंचा पूर्ण हो कृपा कोरी करो तारे वृंदावन वासी मोरा ये बिलास कुंज दियो वास नयने हरि बो सदा युगल रूप राशि ऐ निवेदन धारो सखेर अनुगाता करो ऐ निवेदन धारो सखेर अनुगाता करो सेवाधिकारा दिए करो निज दासी दीना कृष्ण दासे कोई ऐ जिन्ना मोरा होए दीना कृष्ण दासे कोई ऐ जिन्ना मोरा होए श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेमे सदा ये न भासी श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेमे सदा ये न भासी यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ते प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol वृंदा देवी तुलसी महारानी की
Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to return the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter in his wishes fulfilled, bestow your mercy upon him, you make him resident of Vrindavan. My desire is that you also give me a residence in pleasure groves of Shri Vrindavan. Thus, within my vision, I will always behold beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower who carry the answers of Raj. Please give me a privilege to cross from service and make me your own med servant. This very fallen and lowly servant Krishna praise. May I always sing love with Shri Radha and Govind. Shri Mati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sri Kirastakam ki jai. Chaito Dattana Mahajana Bhavamahadava Ninivafanam Shri Akari Vachandakari Karanam Vidya Vadhu Jivanam Ananda Buddhivadhanam Padiparam Purnam Ritashradanam Sarvatmatnam Parampara Vijayati Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Vaudha Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatrarpita Niyamita Shmarane Nakala Itadrushitava Kripaya Bhagavan Mamapi Durdhaivam Idrishamya Janina Nuraga Trinadapi Sunichena Tarorapi Saishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sada Hari Nadhanam Najanam Nasundarim Kavitamba Jagarisha Kamaye Mama Janmani Janmanishwari Bhavatar Bhakti Rahaitu Ketwai Oinandatanuja kinkaram paritamam vishameva bambudo kripaya tava pada pankaju stitaduli sadrisham vichintaya nayanam galorashudharaya vadanam gadagadudaya gira pulakari chitam bapukada tavanama grahane bhavisati Jugaitam nimishena chakrusha prabhusaitam Shunyayatam jagata sarvam Govinda virahena me Aslishva padaratam pinastumam Adarshnar marmahatam karotuva Jata tathava vidadatulam pato Matpranatastu saivanapara Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikyastakam Ki Jai Namo Mahavarannaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gaur Tvishe Namaha Jai. Glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart with the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan moment is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because its presence raised the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds of millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are no hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I'm so unfortunate I have no attraction for them. Once you chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself a Lord on strong street, one should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, and nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your cause of devotional service, birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yes, some or other I have fallen in this ocean of birth and death. Please bring me out from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up? And will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I feel all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and shall remain so. Even if he handles me rightfully by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me, he is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sri Krishna Ki Jai. Namo Bhavarannaya Krishna Prema. There are 10 offenses in the matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided. They are as follows. 1. Blaspheme the devotees who dedicated life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider names of demigods, the Lord Shiva or Brahma, to be equal to or independent of the name of Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic literature or literature and pursuits of Vedic version. 5. To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretations on the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. 8. To consider chanting Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are often Vedas as fruitive activity, karma, kanda. 9. To instruct the faithless person about the glories of the holy name. And 10. To not have complete faith in the chanting of the holy names, and to maintain material attachments, even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. It also an offense to be inattentive while chanting, Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve desired success, Krishna Prema. Now let's offer our most humble obeisance unto all the Vaishnavas, devotees of the Lord. They are just like desired trees, they can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditions of the Vancha
Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Vaishnava Thakur Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutali Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pracharani Namaskar. Shri Guru Pranama prayers Ki Jai. Om Aganyati Mirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chaksurun Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manubhistam Sapitam Yena Bhutali Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jataha Pajikamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Sa Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahaguna Ragunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Saidvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahaguna Lalita Shri Vishaka Nivitam Sa Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Guruvani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutali Srimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Tinamini Shivasavanavi Devi Dayitaya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Dayane Prabhave Namaha Madhur Ujjwal Primadya Shri Rupanuga Bhakti Da Shri Gora Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namastate Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Viruddha Papasiddhanta Dvantaharine Namo Guru Kishoraya Shakshad Vairagya Murtaye Vipralambara Sambodhe Padambujayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sachitananda Namine Gora Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gauravir Baba Bhumestvam Nirdesta Sajjana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Sri Jagannathayate Namaha Vanchakalpatarabhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gurutuse Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhakta Avataram Bhaktakam Namami Bhakta Saktikam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Suratur Bangur Mama Mandamate Gati Matsarva Swapadambujo Radha Madana Mohano Divya Dvindaranya Kalpradumadaha Shimad Ratnagasito Shimad Radha Govindakseva Shartali Sevyamano Smarami Shiman Rasa Rasarambi Vamsivata Tatastita Karsan Venus Swaner Gopir Gopinatakstriye Stuna Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavan Eswari Rishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Shri Guru Pranama prayers Ki Jai. Shri Brahma Samhita Ki Jai. Ishwara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam Chantamani Prakadasat Masukal Pariksha Laksha Vrite Susurabir Abhipali Antam Lakshmi Sahasra Satasambhrama Sevyamanam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Venam Kwanantam Aravinda Dalayataksam Barhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandarpakoti Kamaniya Vishesha Sobam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Lola Chandra Kalasadvana Malyavamsi Ratnam Gadam Pranay Keli Kalavilasam Shaman Tribanga Lalita Niyata Prakasam Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Vritti Manti Pasyanti Panti Kalyanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Ananta Rupam Adyam Purana Purisham Navayovanam Cha Vede Sudurlabham Adurlabham Atma Bhakto Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastukoti Satavatsara Sampragamyo Vayoratapi Manaso Munipungamanam Sopyastiyat Prapadasimya Vichintya Tattve Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Ekop Yasora Chayatum Jagadanda Koti Yas Chakti Rasti Jagadanda Chayayadanta Andanta Rasta Paramanu Chayantarastam Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Yad Bhava Bhavita Diyo Manajastataiva Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayanabusa Suktaryameva Nikama Pratitaistuvanti Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavitabis Tabirya Eva Nicharupa Taya Kalabi Goloka Eva Nivasata Kilatma Bhuto Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santak Sadeva Hidesa Vilokayanti Yam Sham Sundaram Machintya Gunaswarupam Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Sukhalani Menatista Nanavatar Makarod Bhuvanesa Kintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramam Pamam Yo Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasya Prabha Prabhavato Jagananda Koti Yokoti Svasesa Vasudadi Vibhuti Benam Tad Brahma Niskalam Anantam Ashesa Bhutam Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Mayahi Yasya Jagadanda Satani Sute Trigunya Tad Vishaya Veda Vitaya Manam Sattva Vulambi Parasatvam Visuddha Sattvam Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Mataya Manasu Ya Praninam Pratifalam Smaratam Upetya Lilayatena Bhuvanani Jayaya Jasram Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Goloka Namni Nijadamni Tale Chatasya Devi Mahesu Haridama Satesu Tesu Tete Prabhava Nichaya Vitas Chayena Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Shrististati Pralaya Sadhava Saktireka Chayeva Yasya Bhuvanani Vibharti Durga Ichanu Rupam Abhyasya Chattesa Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Shiram Yata Dadivikara Visesa Yoga Sanjayate Nahitata Pritakasi Hetus Yasambhutam Abhitata Sampaitikarya Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Departure Deva Hita Santanam Abhyapetya Dibayate Brita Hetus Sadam Dharma Yastadrik Eva Hicha Vishnu Taya Vibhati Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Yakarna Narnava Jale Bhajatisma Yoga Nidram Ananta Jagadanda Saruma Kupa Adhara Shaktam Avalambya Param Swamurtim Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasyaika Nishvasita Kalamatavalamya Jivanti Loma Vilaja Jagadanda Nata Vishnu Mahansa Yasya Kalaviseso Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Baswanya Tasma Sakalesu Nijesu Teja Swiyam Kiyat Prakatayat Apitadvatatra Brahmaya Esa Jagadanda Vidana Karta Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Pada Palava Yukam Vinidaya Kumbha Twande Pranama Samayesa Ganadi Raja Vignan Vihantam Alamasya Jagatrayasya Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Agnir Mahiga Ganamabu Muruti Sascha Kalasta Tatma Manasiti Jagatrayani Yasmad Bhavanti Vibhavanti Visanti Yamcha Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Yaschak Suresa Savita Sakalagrahanam Raja Samasta Suramurti Rasesa Teja Yasya Gaya Brahmati Sambrita Kala Chakro Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Dharmota Papa Nichaya Sutayastapamsi Brahmadi Kita Patagava Tayasta Jiva Yadata Matra Vibhava Prakata Brabhava Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasvindra Gopa Matavendra Mahosva Karma Bandhanu Rupa Falapajana Matanuti Karmani Nirtati Kintu Chabakti Bhajam Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Yam Kroda Kama Sahaja Pranayadi Bitti Vatsalya Mo Guru Gaura Vasevya Bhava Purusam Chintyatasa Satrisim Taramapurete Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Shaya Kanta Kanta Puramak Purusha Kalpataravo Durmabhumish Chintamani Ganama Itoyam Amritam Kataganam Natyam Gamanam Apimam Sipriyasa Kichiranantam Jyotiparam Apitadaswadhyam Apicha Sayatra Siradi Bihishavati Sirabi Byashta Suman Nime Sardakyo Vavrajatina Hiya Tripi Samaya Bhaje Sveta Dvipam Tamaham Iha Golokamitiyam Vedanta Stesam Taksiti Virachara Katipaya Ishwara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigra Anadiradi Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam Chi Brahma Samhita Ki Shri Guru Vastaka prayers Ki The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy, just as a cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish it. So the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master, who is an ocean of auspicious qualities, chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical instruments. The spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion with his mind, sometimes his hair stands on end, he feels quivering in his body, and tears flow from his eyes. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shri Shri Radha and Krishna, and he also engages his disciples in such worship. They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean their temple, and perform other similar worship of the Lord. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food, analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked. When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavat Prasada, he is satisfied. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet as such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes of Radhika and Madhava and their qualities, names, and forms. The spiritual master aspires to relish these in every moment. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance unto Lotus Street as such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is very dear because he is expert at assisting gopis who at different times make different tasteful arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavan. I offer my most humble obeisance unto Lotus Street as such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he is the most confidential servant to the Lord. This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance unto Lotus Street as such a spiritual master is a bona fide representative of Sri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master. Three times a day I should offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, his divine grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Srimad Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila, chapter 7, verse number 102. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Shri Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhaktivindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Eta Suni Hasi Prabhu Balila Vachana Dukana Manahayadi Kari Nivedana. After hearing the Mayavadi sannyasi speak in that way, in other words, they praised Lord Chaitanya, they spoke in a very respectful way to him after hearing what his guru had taught him. And they said, look, there's no objection to your being a great devotee of Lord Krishna. Everyone's satisfied with this, but why do you avoid discussion on Vedanta Sutra? What is the fault in it? So then, now Lord Chaitanya is saying, or Krishnadas Kaviraj says, after hearing the Mayavadi sannyasi speak in that way, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu smiled slightly and said, now Lord Chaitanya says, my dear sirs, speaking to the all the sannyasis and Prakasananda Saraswati, if you don't mind, I can say something to you regarding Vedanta Sutra. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Mayavadi sannyasis, appreciating Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, inquired from him why he did not discuss Vedanta philosophy. Actually, however, the entire system of Vaishnava activity is based on Vedanta philosophy. Vaishnavas do not neglect Vedanta, but they do not care to understand Vedanta on the basis of the Sarirabhasya commentary by Sankaracharya. Therefore, to clarify the situation, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, with the permission of the Mayavadi sannyasis, wanted to speak regarding Vedanta philosophy. The Vaishnavas are by far the greatest philosophers in the world, and the greatest among them was Srila Jiva Goswami Prabhu, whose philosophy was again presented less than 400 years later by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura Maharaj. Therefore, one must know very well that Vaishnava philosophers are not sentimentalists or cheap devotees like the Sahajiyas. These are the false sampradayas who claim to follow Vaishnavism, but actually they're just imposters. Therefore, one must know very well that the Vaishnava philosophers are not sentimentalists or cheap devotees like the Sahajiyas. All the Vaishnava acharyas were very vastly learned scholars who understood Vedanta philosophy fully, for unless one knows Vedanta philosophy, he cannot be an acharya. To be accepted as an acharya among Indian transcendentalists who follow the Vedanta principles, one must become a vastly learned scholar in Vedanta philosophy, either by studying it or hearing it. When Prabhupada says that the greatest of all the philosophers was Rupa Goswami, well, that's one of, and then 400 years later, the same philosophy, Rupa Goswami, was repeated by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. That's why we say, Namaste Gauravani Shimurtaye Dinatarine Rupa Nuga Virudapa Apasiddhanta Dvantaharine. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you, who are the personified teachings of Lord Chaitanya. You are the deliverer of the fallen souls. You do not tolerate any statement against the teachings of devotional service enunciated by Srila Rupa Goswami. So this is glorifying Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who will not tolerate, or who does not tolerate, any statement against the teachings of devotional service enunciated or spoken by Srila Rupa Goswami. So we see why Prabhupada says Rupa Goswami was the greatest philosopher. Well, he actually said Jiva Goswami was the greatest among the philosophers. But Rupa Goswami, and it says, whose philosophy was again presented less than 400 years later by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura Maharaja. So, but he also, Bhaktisiddhanta, would never say anything or accept any statement that was contrary to what Rupa Goswami said. And Rupa Goswami was directly instructed by Lord Chaitanya, and he wrote, the tremendous books about pure devotional service. Okay, so now it says, all the Vaishnava acharyas were vastly learned scholars who understood Vedanta philosophy fully, for unless one knows Vedanta philosophy, he cannot be an acharya. To be accepted as an acharya among Indian transcendentalists who follow the Vedic principles, one must become a vastly learned scholar in Vedanta philosophy, either by studying it or hearing it. Bhakti develops in pursuance of Vedanta philosophy. This is stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.2.12. Tat Shradhana Munayo Gyanavairagya Yuktaye Pasyanti Atmani Chatmanam Bhaktya Shruta Grihitaya. The words Bhaktya Shruta Grihitaya in this verse are very important, for they indicate that bhakti must be based upon the philosophy of the Upanishads and Vedanta Sutra. Srila Rupa Goswami said, Shruti Smriti Pranadi Pancharatma Vidimbina Aitkantaki Harir Bhaktir Utpatayaiva Kalpate. Devotional service performed without reference to the Vedas, Puranas, Pancharatras, etc., must be considered sentimentalism, and it causes nothing but disturbance to society. There are different grades of Vaishnavas: Kanishta Adhikaris, Madhyama Adhikaris, and Uttama Adhikaris. But to be a Madhyama Adhikari preacher, one must be a learned scholar in Vedanta Sutra and other Vedic literatures, because when Bhakti Yoga develops on the basis of Vedanta philosophy, it is factual and steady. In this connection, we may quote the translation and purport of the verse mentioned above. And the verse, Tatshadanak Munayo, Jnana Vairagya Yuktaye, Pasyanti Atmani Chatmanam Bhaktya Shruta Grihitaya. Translation: the seriously inquisitive student or sage. This is 1st Canto, 2nd chapter, 12th verse. 1st Canto, 2nd chapter, 12th verse. The seriously inquisitive student or sage, well equipped with knowledge and detachment, realizes that absolute truth by rendering devotional service in terms of what he has heard from the Vedanta. And the purport Prabhupada writes, the absolute truth is realized in full by the process of devotional service to the Lord, Vasudeva, or the personality of Godhead, Krishna, who is the full-fledged absolute truth. Brahman is his transcendental bodily effulgence, and Paramatma is his partial representation. As such, Brahman or Paramatma realization of absolute truth is but a partial realization. There are 4 different types of human beings: the karmis, the jnanis, the yogis, and the devotees. The karmis are materialistic, whereas other 3 are transcendental. The first-class transcendentalists are the devotees who have realized the Supreme Person. Second-class transcendentalists are those who have partially realized the plenary portion of the Absolute Truth. And the third-class transcendentalists are those who have barely realized the spiritual focus of the Absolute Truth. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita and other Vedic literatures, the Supreme Person is realized by devotional service, which is backed by full knowledge and detachment from material association. Vedic literatures, as stated in Bhagavad Gita and other Vedic literatures, the Supreme Person is realized by devotional service, which is backed by full knowledge and detachment from material association. We have already discussed the point that devotional service is followed by knowledge and detachment from material association. So you see, the definition of a devotee is given by Lord Chaitanya, where he says, Vaishnava Swarupahaya. So the identification of Vaishnava as a person who avoids the association of non-devotees. That's the way you can tell who is a Vaishnava. Jivera Swarupahaya, Nityara Krishnadas, and he is always engaged in devotional service. That's the actual fundamental position of the devotee. Jivera Swarupahaya. He's always engaged. In other words, it says, Jivera Swarupahaya, Nityara Krishnadas. He is eternally engaged as the servant of the Lord. And also, the way to understand a devotee is that he avoids the association of non-devotees. And that says, Asat Sangha Tyaga E Vaishnavachar. So Asat Sangha, giving up the association of Asat people, A Vaishnavachar, then you can understand who is a Vaishnava. So therefore, we have to be very careful, and we also have to instruct our children to be very careful, not to intimately in any way associate with non-devotees. Intimately means seeing them eat meat, hearing them talk nonsense, and do nonsense, So the seeing and hearing and in general associating with non-devotees should be strictly avoided. If we feel comfortable in the association of non-devotees, then we are on a very low level of Krishna consciousness. And with the risk of losing Krishna consciousness completely because of that bad association. The second-class transcendentalists are those who have partially realized the plenary portion of the Absolute Truth, and the third-class transcendentalists are those who have barely realized the spiritual focus of the Absolute Person. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita and other Vedic literatures, the Supreme Person is realized by devotional service, which is backed by full knowledge and detachment from material association. We have already discussed the point that devotional service is followed by knowledge and detachment from material association. So that is a verse, again, from the first canto, second chapter, Bhagavad Gita. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Gyanayat Yasavairagam Gyanam Chayad Ahaitakam. So the causeless mercy of the Lord is for that devotee who has taken a great interest in hearing about Krishna, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam and hearing Bhagavad Gita. And they naturally develop, just by hearing from bona fide sources, knowledge and renunciation. You don't have to attempt to develop those things separately. It will naturally develop by regular hearing. So, devotional service is followed by knowledge and detachment from material association. As Brahman and Paramatma realization are imperfect realizations of the Absolute Truth, so the means of realizing Brahman and Paramatma, that is the paths of jnana and yoga, are also imperfect means of realizing the Absolute Truth. Devotional service, which is based on the foreground of full knowledge, combined with detachment from material association, and which is fixed by dint of the oral reception of the Vedanta Sutra, is the only perfect method by which the seriously inquisitive student can realize the Absolute Truth. Devotional service is not, therefore, meant for the less intelligent class of transcendentalists. So this is a very important sentence. It says, devotional service which is based on the foreground of full knowledge combined with detachment from material association, and which is fixed by dint of the oral reception of the Vedanta Sutra, meaning hearing Vedanta Sutra, is the only perfect method by which the seriously inquisitive student can realize the Absolute Truth. Devotional service is not, therefore, meant for the less intelligent class of transcendentalists. There are three classes of devotees, namely first, second, and third class. The third class devotees, or the neophytes, who have no knowledge and are not detached from material association, but who are simply attracted by the preliminary process of worshiping the deity in the temple, are called material devotees. Material devotees are more attached to material benefits than transcendental profit. Therefore, one has to make definite progress from the position of material devotional service to the second class devotional position. In the second class position, that's called Madhyama Adhikar, the devotee can see four principles in the devotional line, namely the personality of Godhead, his devotees, the ignorant, and the envious. One has to raise himself at least to the stage of second-class devotee and thus become eligible to know the Absolute Truth. So here, this is further explained in the Bhagavad Gita, where it says, I think it's the 9th chapter. Yeah, 9th chapter, 26th verse, where it says, no, I'm sorry, wait a minute. One second. Yeah. It's the 10th chapter. Okay, 1 second. Okay, devotees. Let me see here. Yeah, it is the 9th chapter. And it says, there are three kinds of devotees. This is 9th chapter, verse number 11. There are three kinds of devotees. It's in the it's at the end of a very long purport. The next to the last paragraph, it says, there are three kinds of devotees of the Lord, and the neophyte is in the lowest stage. The neophyte devotee gives more attention to the deity in the temple than to other devotees. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura warns that this sort of mentality should be corrected. A devotee should see that because Krishna is present in everyone's heart as Paramatma, everybody is the embodiment or the temple of the Supreme Lord. So, as one offers respect to the temple of the Lord, he should similarly properly respect each and every body in which the Paramatma dwells. Everyone should therefore be given proper respect and should not be neglected. Okay, so there it says that the neophyte devotee who simply gives his attention to the Archamurti, or the form of the Supreme Lord in the temple, and does not respect other living entities, is uselessly worshipping the form of the Lord in the temple. So this is a warning to all our pujaris. If they are not respectful to guests or other devotees, and they're simply engaged in devotional in serving the deity, what does it say here? They are uselessly worshiping the form of the Lord in the temple. That's how serious it is. Because the graduate someone who graduates to a higher level of deity worship sees the same deity in the heart of every living entity. That means they have actually graduated and become mature in their understanding. But if there is a pujari who, first of all, is considered a neophyte devotee who simply gives his attention to the Archamurti, or the form of the Supreme Lord in the temple, and does not respect other living entities, is uselessly worshipping the form of the Lord in the temple. Very, very serious statement, right? And here it says also, therefore, one has to make definite progress from the position of material devotional service to the second-class devotional position. In the second-class position, the devotee can see four principles in the devotional line, namely, the personality of Godhead, his devotees, the ignorant, and the envious. So, the devotee, the Madhyama Adhikari, the second level of devotee, worships the Lord, respects the devotees, is very merciful to ignorant people, and avoids the association of envious people. He sees those four classes. And if that Madhyama Adhikari is a leader, if he or she recognizes an envious person, they must keep that person away from the temple and the devotees, because that person will try and destroy the devotional service of the devotees. Okay, so then it says, the second-class devotee position. In the second-class position, devotee can see four principles in the devotional line, namely the personality of Godhead, his devotees, in other words, Lord's devotees, the ignorant and the envious. One has to raise himself at least to the stage of second-class devotee and thus become eligible to know the absolute truth. A third-class devotee, therefore, has to receive instructions of devotional service from the authoritative sources of Bhagavata, of the Srimad Bhagavatam. The number one Bhagavata is the established personality of devotee, and the other Bhagavata is the message of Godhead. The third-class devotee, therefore, has to go to the personality of devotee in order to learn the instructions of devotional service. Such a personality of devotee is not a professional man who earns his livelihood by the business of the Bhagavatam. Such a devotee must be a representative of Sukadeva Goswami, like Sutta Goswami, and must preach the cult of devotional service for the all-around benefit of all people. A neophyte devotee has very little taste for hearing from the authorities. So that's another symptom of a neophyte devotee. They never come to class. Never. They avoid it like the plague. As soon as the class starts, they walk out. Right? And so that's the way you can recognize a neophyte devotee. Right? Such a neophyte devotee makes a show of hearing from the professional man to satisfy his sense. In other words, if there's a professional reciter, a sahajya, who does Bhagavat Saptaha, the low-class devotee will go and hear from that person, but not from the genuine Vaishnava speakers. You know. And then it says, this sort of hearing from professional reciters and chanting has spoiled the whole thing, so one should be very careful about the faulty process. The holy messages of Godhead, as inculcated in the Bhagavad Gita or in the Srimad Bhagavatam, are undoubtedly transcendental subjects, but even though they are so, such transcendental matters are not to be received from the professional man, who spoils them as the serpent spoils milk simply by touch of its tongue. Whoa. So we shouldn't even hear such people chant or preach. A sincere devotee must therefore be prepared to hear the Vedic literature like the Upanishads, Vedanta Sutra, and other literatures left by the previous authorities or Goswamis for the benefit of his progress. Without hearing such literatures, one cannot make actual progress. Without hearing and following the instructions, the show of devotional service becomes worthless, and therefore a sort of disturbance in the path of devotional service. Unless, therefore, devotional service is established on the principle of Shruti, that means the scriptures, Smriti, that means scriptures spoken about Krishna, and Shruti is scriptures spoken directly by Krishna, so that would be Bhagavad Gita, and then the second one, Smriti, would be Srimad Bhagavatam. Purana, the ancient histories of the Vedas, and Pancharatra, which was authorities, which is Narada Muni and what he has written. The make show of devotional service should at once be rejected. So unless it's based on Shruti, Smriti, Purana, and Pancharatra authorities, the show of devotional service by neophyte devotees should at once be rejected. An unauthorized devotee should never be recognized as a pure devotee. By assimilation of such messages from the Vedic literatures, one can see the all-pervading localized aspect of the personality of Godhead within his own self constantly. This is called samadhi. Well, yeah, when you understand Krishna is in your heart, even if it's theoretical, but you accept it, then one is, so it says, by assimilation of such messages, so by regular hearing the scriptures spoken by genuine devotees, one can see the all-pervading localized aspect of the personality of Godhead within its own self constantly. This is called samadhi. And the real pujari sees the Lord in the heart of all living entities. And that there one lady came here one day, and she was fuming mad. She said, "I'm not coming back to this temple anymore." I said, "Why?" She said, "Because one of your pujaris treated me really bad, and I'm not going to tolerate that. So I'm not coming here anymore." Now, what are you going to do? You see, she said, "I don't like his attitude. He's very puffed up, and he treats people like they're dirt." And that's in this temple. That's in this temple, right? So the best way to chase people away is to not treat them nicely, and to act as if you're puffed up and you know better than them. Actually, what was the thing that convinced the Mayavadi sannyasis? What was the thing that convinced them? Well, Prabhupada explains it here. He says that these personal exchanges of love do not appeal to the Mayavadi sannyasis. Therefore, the original purpose of the Mayavadi sannyasis of Benares in meeting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was to defeat his personal conception of God. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, however, as a preacher, turned the minds of the Mayavadi sannyasis. They were melted by the sweet words of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and thus became friendly and spoke to him also in sweet words. You see? So, anybody who acts as if they're puffed up, they know better than other people, and treats the ordinary people that come to the temple with disdain, they are actually demoniac, because they're chasing people away. They're not actually attracted. And to speak harshly, or to speak in a what you would call dismissive way. In other words, a dismissive way would be, look that word up, dismissive, D-I-S-M-I-S-S-I-V-E. What does that mean? Dismissive. What's it say? Say it out loud.
To reject something or someone, having or showing a disdainful attitude towards someone or something regarded as unworthy of serious attention.
Right, unworthy of serious attention. That's the point. Say, that's exactly what this pujari did. That's exactly what he did. Say. So this is very serious. It's actually demoniac behavior. And you see this a lot in India also. You know, the pandas act like that also, you know. They're always dismissive of the people, you know. And they don't give them. But if a rich person comes, oh my God, they really take good care of them, right?
I had experienced this several times, Maharaj, in India. That rich people come, they are like...
They get, you know, VIP treatment, right?
And for regular people, they just...
Yeah, they say, well, yeah, like that. They move that. See, there's two ways of communicating with people. One is with words, and the other is with body gestures.
Body just... That's very...
My father-in-law actually had some negative experience with ISKCON only. So he is like, he went for one of the Janmashtami or something, some festival, but they were only primarily interested in collecting funds. The moment they see that, okay,
You don't have any money.
you don't have money or you're not interested in that, like, it's like,
Go
oh,
away,
okay.
go away.
So exactly.
Hurry
So he is like, for lifetime he is now turned away from.
Yeah, for a lifetime, right?
Yes.
He won't go back there.
Yeah.
That's what this lady told me too. She said, I'm not coming back to this temple. Your pujari was really, puffed up and treated me like I was dirt. You know, I mean, without even saying words, it's the body gestures that also communicate that, you know, you're not important, so go away. You know, I'm only going to take care of the rich people, not you low-class people or whatever. So, you know, but here it says that and there's over 1,000 sannyasis, right, in Benares, listening to Lord Chaitanya speak, and they were trying to convince him that he did not understand Vedanta and that he should accept that God is not a person, right? And it says here, they were melted by the sweet words of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and thus became friendly and spoke to him also in sweet words. That is a real devotee. That is a real devotee. What time is it now? 7. Okay. We're going to finish this purport, and then there's one other thing I want to say, and then we'll stop. So a sincere devotee must therefore be prepared to hear the Vedic literature, like the Upanishads, Vedanta Sutra, and other literatures left by previous authorities or Goswamis, for the benefit of his or her progress. Without hearing such literatures, one cannot make actual progress. And without hearing and following the instructions, the show of devotional service becomes worthless, and therefore a sort of disturbance in the path of devotional service. It's a disturbance. The pujari who acts like that, their whole service, worshiping the deity, is useless. That's what Prabhupada said here. In the purport 9:11, he said that, so any neophyte devotee who simply gives his attention to the Archa Murti, or the form of the Supreme Lord in the temple, meaning deity worship, and does not respect other living entities, is uselessly worshiping the form of the Lord in a temple. Uselessly worshiping. It means that their worship is zero. Although they're making a lot of efforts, but the whole thing is zero. So then it says, and without hearing and following the instructions, the show of devotional service becomes worthless, and therefore a sort of disturbance in the path of devotional service. Unless, therefore, devotional service is established on the principle of Shruti, Smriti, Purana, and Pancharatra authorities, the make show of devotional service should at once be rejected. Whoa, that's even more serious. It should be rejected. What that person is doing should be rejected. An unauthorized devotee should never be recognized as a pure devotee. By assimilation of such messages from the Vedic literatures, one can see the all-pervading localized aspect of the personality Godhead within his own self constantly. This is called samadhi. So when you engage in humble and pure devotional service and treat all people very nicely, even bad people, you still give them nice, these Mayavadi sannyasis were the worst, because they're the worst aparadhis of Krishna. But Lord Chaitanya spoke very sweetly and melted their hearts by the sweetness of his words, right? Melted their hearts. So here it's saying, when you understand that Krishna is in your heart and in the heart of all the living entities, then you become a genuine devotee. And this is also explained in Bhagavad Gita in the 6th chapter. Let's see what it says. It says, a true yogi observes me. This is 6th chapter, 29th verse. A true yogi observes me in all beings and also sees every being in me. Indeed, the self-realized person sees me, the Supreme Lord, everywhere. That's the point, everywhere. And the next verse says, Yomam pasyati sarvatra pasyam cha mai pasyati. Sarvam cha mai pasyati. Tasyaham na pranasyami, sachame na pranasyati. One who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I am never lost, nor is he ever lost to me. Okay? So the same thing that Prabhupada is saying here at the end of this purport is said in Bhagavad Gita. All right. Okay. So, hearing this, the next verse, Iha suni bale sarva sanyasiragana tomake dekie yaichi Sakshat Narayana. Hearing this, the Mayavadi sannyasis became somewhat humble and addressed Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as Narayana himself, who they all agreed he was. So we'll stop right there, and this last thing I want to read. It's a letter from Prabhupada, written November 18, 1972. And he says, regarding the general state of affairs at the Amsterdam temple, I can understand there is some disturbance among you, but that is not to be taken very seriously. The real business is preaching. The real business is preaching work. And if there is full attention on this matter only, all other businesses will be automatically successful. Okay? Fighting amongst ourselves is not at all good. If our preaching work is neglected, or if we fall down on following the regulative principles, such as rising before 4 a.m. in the morning, chanting 16 rounds like that, if these things are not strictly observed, then Maya will enter and spoil everything. So my best advice to you is to strictly observe these things yourself and be the example so that all others may follow. We should not criticize each other as Vaishnavas, because there is fault in everyone and we may ourselves be subject to criticism. The best thing is to be above suspicion ourselves. Then, if we see discrepancies and make suggestions, the others will automatically respect and take action to rectify matters. That is cooperation. We must exist on such cooperation. Otherwise, the whole thing is doomed if we simply go on fighting over some small thing. So try to organize things and preach together in this spirit, and that will please me very, very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Haribo Haribo. Are there any questions?
So I think this particular explanation of Kanishta Adhikari, Madhyama Adhikari is very helpful to understand how our own behavior is probably changing over time. Either go up or down.
So we didn't mention Uttama Adhikari. We just mentioned Kanishta and Madhyama. The Uttama Adhikari sees everybody as a devotee. So therefore, they're not so good at preaching to the general public. The Madhyama Adhikari is expert at preaching to the general public. So Prabhupada was an Uttama Adhikari, but he had to come down on the level of Madhyama Adhikari in order to preach effectively. Because the Uttama Adhikari accepts everyone as a pure devotee, because he sees Krishna in everyone's heart. Right? Now, the Madhyama Adhikari also sees Krishna in everyone's heart. But if he sees that someone is envious, then he avoids the association of that person. And if he's a leader, he makes sure that person does not come to the temple, because they will do everything possible to destroy devotional service and to destroy people's faith and Krishna consciousness, and it'll disrupt the whole temple. Right? So, therefore, there was this one guy that was making the burritos a couple weeks ago, right? And he's been coming for years doing it. And then he freaked out and insisted on cooking the burritos, and Prabhuji tried to explain to him very gently, that you had to be trained to do it. And he refused to accept and kept on cooking. He just went right to, and he had to stop him, and the guy got angry and started shouting at the devotee. So you see, and then later on he called me, and again, very nicely I was explaining to him there are rules and regulations. Just like if I come to your house and I walk in, I go straight to your kitchen and start eating directly out of your refrigerator, would you accept that behavior? I said, no, that's your house. I have to respect your rules in your house. So this is Krishna's house, and you have to respect Krishna's rules in his house. I said, they're not our rules. We all have to follow the same rules. So I said, if you want to be trained to cook for Krishna, well, I'll train you, right? And it takes time, you know. You have to be initiated first, and so he didn't, you know, he rejected that, you know. So then I realized the guy's envious, you know, and I had to tell him, you know, basically, don't come to the temple. Yeah. But that behavior is unacceptable, right? How would you feel if someone comes to your house and goes to the kitchen, you know, starts cooking for himself, you know? You would throw the person out, right? So, yeah, we cannot accept the behavior of envious people. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yeah.
Maharaj, this line that you have read today and yesterday, they were melted by the sweet words of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and thus became friendly and spoke to him also in sweet words. So my question is, for a neophyte, how neophyte can stick to this speaking sweet words like consistently, not like if situation is normal we can speak sweet words, but let's say Janmashtami festival come or any festival comes.
You have to remember what your purpose is. Your purpose is to help people become friendly and eventually devotees of Krishna. So you're not going to do that. I mean, you have to put yourself in their position. If you come to the temple and someone speaks to you harshly, would you like that?
No.
No. So always put yourself in their position. Right? So sometimes I see people come and they're here for the first time. They don't even know that you can have prasadam. And sometimes, you know, like it's in the morning where we don't really have prasadam to give out. But I always, somehow or other, I give it either from my own plate or whatever. And I'd let them know that there's some prasadam. And they say, oh, just give me a little bit. And I said, okay. Right. Even if I take it out of my own plate, they don't mind because it's Mahaprasadam. So we have to always be very kind, very patient, and treat people with respect and speak nicely.
So my question
now, if someone is envious, and you have to give them a chance to really show their enviousness, right? You can't just jump to a conclusion, but they have to do something that's egregious, that, you know, just shows their enviousness. Then, you know, they have to be, you know, kept away from the temple. But those are rare things. Not everybody is envious. You know, some people sometimes get angry, but it doesn't mean they're envious. But the way you know if someone is envious, no matter how much good instructions, no matter how sweetly you speak to them, they still remain adamantly antagonistic. That means they're completely gone. So you cannot tolerate that. But a person who gets angry and then you tell them, please calm down, and then they do, and they listen, well, that can be excused.
So my question is more like on consistency for a neophyte, like in all the time
No,
same.
but listen, you don't want to fry the person you're trying to save. You understand?
Yes. Like I can give one
so
example.
your purpose is to help people become Krishna conscious, not help them leave the temple and get a bad impression. So we should always be kind and patient and try and help people and give them prasadam. If they're not listening, you at least give them prasadam. Haribol. Okay, thank you. All glories to Prabhupada. There's so many things we can learn about Krishna consciousness. Every day there's something. Okay, who wants to sing? There's this prison in the United States called Sing Sing. But it doesn't mean S-I-N-G. You know, it's a pronunciation. It sounds like sing.
Sri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma.
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma.
Bandhu moi savadana mate.
Bandhu moi savadana mate.
Jahara prasade bhai e bhava turiya jai.
Janar prasade he bhavatariya jai.
Krishna prapti hoy jaha hoy the.
Krishna prapti hoya hoy te.
Guru mukha padma vakya chitte te koriya kya.
Guru mukha padma vakya chitte te koriya kya.
Arna kori ho mane asha.
Orna koriya mane asa.
Sri Guru Charane Rati aise uttama gati.
Shri Guru Charane Rati aise uttama gati.
Jai prasade pure sarva asha.
Ye prasade pure sarva asa.
चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से.
चक्षुदान दिल जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से.
दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो.
दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो.
प्रेमा भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते.
श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अदन जनर बंधु.
वेद गाय जहाँ राचरितो.
वेद गाय जनर चरितो.
श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अधमा जनर बंधु.
श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अदन जनर बंधु.
लोकना लोके राजीवाना.
लोकेनाथ लोके राजीवाना.
हाँ हाँ प्रभु करो दया देहो मोरे पाद छाया.
आहा प्रभु को हृदय दया मोरे पद छाया.
बेजास गुसुक त्रिभुवाना. प्रभुपाद पतित पवाना.
प्रभुपाद पतित पवाना.
जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद.
जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद.
नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले. श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी iti namine.
Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami
Iti namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Pasyadyade Sadarine.
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Pasyatya Desatarine.
Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Shri
Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parvrajagachasta Tarasata Shri Shimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Sri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Sukha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Samkund Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana ki jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Shri Mayapura Dham ki jai. Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai. Tulasi Devi ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Ganga Maya ki jai. Jamuna Maya ki jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to Samudra. All glories to Samudra. All glories to Samudra. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Patita Pavana ki jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Namaste. Okay. The Lotus Feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great honor and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. I only wish to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection of
all desire. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him ecstatic prema emanates. By him ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, and the Lord and master of the devotees. O Master, be merciful and beauty shape of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread all over the three worlds.